Hello guys, welcome back to Car Obsession and welcome to another walk around. This time around you join me with the brand new Ford Fiesta Trend. Now my regular viewers may remember that I drove this car, well albeit briefly, last year. Now at the time the Trend was only available with just one engine. It was the 1.1 litre naturally aspirated petrol, and whilst it wasn't a bad engine, I did think if only it had an EcoBoost. Well, Ford has listened, and now it has got an EcoBoost. So I will come on to the engine a little bit later. By the way, there's also a choice of a diesel as well, but again, I'll come on to that a little bit later. But yes, as always, I will take you around the car, talk you through the specification, and also give you my first impressions. So yes, the Ford Fiesta Trend. This is the brand new entry-level version of the ever popular Super Mini. And let's go through the specifications. So the starting price, if you go for the 3-door, as you can see I've got the 5-door, is £16,115, which may seem like a fair amount of money for a base model, but as you will soon see, this has got quite a good amount of specification and it's pretty much on par with its rivals. Yes, there are one or two cars that are cheaper, but also one or two cars which are more expensive. So, you know, this is pretty competitively priced. Now, in regard to cost, if you go for the 3-door, that starts from £16,115, but if you want a 5-door, you need to add £500 onto that, so £16,515. It's good to see that Ford is still offering the choice of a 3-door. I'm pretty sure all of its rivals come only in 5-door, so it's good to see Ford is sticking to its guns and is still offering a 3-door version in this day and age, because yeah, it is a bit of a rarity. The car you see here is a fair bit more because it's 5-door, it's also got the EcoBoost engine and it's got a few options. So the car you see right here, right now, is actually a little bit over £18,500, which does seem a little bit scandalous, but like I say, that is with options. So you may be better off just buying a mid-range Fiesta as opposed to buying this car and speccing it up. But you know, I suppose it all depends on your budget and what you're looking to do. Anyway, back onto the specification. Now, when I drove the car last year, it didn't have LED headlights. It had LED daytime running lights, but not LED headlights. Now, they are only for the low beam. The high beam are still halogens, but it's still quite impressive to have LED headlights, although you know, the majority of its rivals have that as well in a similar trim level. So it's not exactly groundbreaking, but it's still useful to have. You get 16-inch alloys as standard. Again, that's pretty much on par with its rivals, but if you go for the base model Polo, that has steel wheels, but the base model Polo is cheaper, so you know, swings and roundabouts. And at the rear, you also have LED lights. Actually, I'll tell you what, let me actually put the lights on so you can see. Right, let me unlock the car. Now, as you would expect, this hasn't got keyless entry, but of course it's still got remote central locking. I do apologise for any wind noise. The UK has been battered by the winds for as long as I can remember, and it is a very windy and cold day today. That towel is there so I don't get my muddy trainers on the carpet, in case you're wondering. So let's turn the headlights on. Just put the window down just in case the car decides to lock itself. I have had that with one or two other cars. So I know it's not the greatest, what's the word I'm trying to get at? Not the greatest representation, because obviously it's not very dark at the moment, but it gives you an idea of what the lights look like. They do look quite sleek. If I take you to the rear, you see quite again, yeah, it's quite a sleek looking car. Now, speaking of looks are of course subjective. This particular car has an optional colour. This is called chrome blue. I personally wouldn't have it. I prefer the what's it called? The desert island blue. I think that's a nicer colour. In these kind of conditions, this blue looks quite flat. It looks quite dull, but I must admit, when the sun hits it, it is a really nice colour. But even so, I would still personally go for the desert island blue. But yeah, that's personal preference, of course. But yeah, overall, it is a smart looking car. You also get rear privacy glass as standard. Not all of its rivals get that for a similar kind of trim level. And yeah, overall, it is a pretty tidy looking motor. Now, if I take you on the inside, turn the lights off, otherwise that'll probably just keep going off. So the inside is quite a nice place to be, and to be honest, when you step in, you know, I would like to think you wouldn't know this is a base model, because, you know, it's finished quite nicely. You've got, you know, a leather steering wheel, the seats are quite nicely finished, you've got nice blue stitching, I like that, it's a nice touch. And oh yeah, you've also got leather on the handbrake and on the gear lever as well. And I think it's finished nicely. So as standard, you do get an 8-inch touchscreen, which is larger than what you get in some of its rivals. So for example, the Corsa, the 208, they get a 7-inch touchscreen, I believe. And if you go for the base model Clio, I don't think you even get a touchscreen. So that's worth bearing in mind. Let me turn on the ignition like so. Of course, you have a turnkey ignition. It will make a few noises. So since I last drove the Fiesta Trend, the Ford Sync system has had a bit of an update. So the actual display looks more modern, it looks more fresh, and I think it looks slicker. I think it looks pretty good. I've always been a fan of the Ford Sync system, but I have said it in the past, it looks a little bit dull, whereas now it looks it looks fresher. So as standard, you get an 8-inch touchscreen, whereas some of its rivals you have to make do with 7 inches, although let's face it, it's not much difference. And to be honest, if you go for the Clio, the base model Clio, I don't believe that even has a touchscreen. You may have spotted the tab for navigation, that is an optional extra. But to be honest, if you have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay as standard anyway, you may not need to have navigation. Air conditioning comes as standard, but as an option, this car has got heated front seats and also a heated steering wheel. In fact, let me talk you through the optional extras. Now, I am going to cheat a little bit and refer to the spec sheet that came with the car, but it's just quicker. So the chrome blue paintwork, that is £500. You've also got the City Pack, which gives you rear parking sensors, and it also gives you the electric folding wing mirrors. That is £400. The navigation, that's a £300 option. And you also get the comfort pack, which is the heated steering wheel and also the heated seats. That is £350. So yeah, as I mentioned, this car is £18,545, which does seem a little bit balmy for a base model, but of course that is with options. I have a 6-speed manual gearbox because I have the 1-litre EcoBoost engine. If you go for the 1.1 litre petrol, you get a 5-speed. And I think if you go for the 1.5 litre diesel, I think again you get a 6-speed, but I may be wrong. If I am wrong, I will put a subtitle below. You also got a choice of different driving modes, which I don't believe you get in any of the car's rivals. So I've got a choice of normal, eco, or sport. They are quite self-explanatory, to be honest. But it's quite handy to have that, because I must admit, when I drove the Trend last year, although it was quite a quick drive, I don't remember it having driving modes. So maybe that's been a change to the specification, or perhaps I've just got a poor memory. But yeah, the inside is a nice place to be. You've got soft touch on the dash. I know some of you wonder why, you know, people like me bang on about soft touch dashboard. It just helps to give the inside a nicer quality. You know, if it's hard scratchy plastic, it's not quite as nice. But yes, I fully agree that you're not going to drive around groping the dashboard, but it's nice to have a soft touch anyway. You've also got black gloss detailing with a little bit of silver detailing as well. And I think the inside is quite a nice place to be. And if I got in here for the first time, I don't think that this would be a base model. To continue the specification, this car also has the NCAP pack. So I've got lane keep assist. I've also got autonomous emergency braking. Autonomous emergency braking. Let me put my teeth back in. Speed limiter, hill start assist, and you'll also have automatic headlights, as you can see just there. You've also got, well, I've mentioned the speed limiter. Yeah. So let me talk you through the practicality. So the door bins are of a decent size. As you can see, I've been able to fit in a 1.5 litre bottle in there. There's also a bit of space left over if you want to put a chocolate bar or some snacks in there. Let me move my hand so you can actually see properly. You have a little cubby hole down here where perhaps you can pop some loose change, or I like to put my smartphone in there when I'm using the smartphone connectivity. a really small slot there. 2 cup holders, well 3 cup holders in the middle. So you've got 2 for average size cups, and you could put an energy drink in there, a Red Bull or that kind of thing. There's also another cup holder here, and you may have noticed there's a USB port. There's also a USB port here. As you can see, I've got my phone lead plugged in. 12-volt socket. And there's also, of course, a glove box which has a decent amount of space. As you can see, I've got my lunch in there, a very health conscious lunch. I've got my dairy milk and my very unhealthy crisps. But you've also got a shelf in here as well, dedicated for the owner's manual, which I think is a very practical touch. I do like that. Getting a comfortable driving position is easy because I'm pretty sure the steering wheel adjusts for rake and reach. Yep, that's pretty impressive for a base model. A lot of, cheap Super Minis, so let me just put it back how it was. There we go. Quite a few cheap Super Minis wouldn't give you the option to adjust it for rake and reach. It'd normally just be for rake. The seat has also got a decent amount of adjustment as well, so I've had no issues getting a comfortable driving setup. Now let's move on to the rear. Let's talk about rear space. Now, I will be honest, out of all of the Super Minis on the market, the Ford Fiesta hasn't got the greatest amount of rear space. It's not by any means awful, but it's not quite as much as, let's say, a Seat Ibiza. But let me step in like so. As always, the driver's seat has been set for me. I'm 6'2", so I am, of course, a taller chap. I try not to get my grubby trainers on the fabric, which is easier said than done. Right, let's close the door. So as you can see, my knee room isn't particularly impressive. Okay, yes, if I wanted, I probably could tilt my seat up a little bit more, so I'm sat a little bit more upright. But even so, yeah, I've never had impressive knee room in a Fiesta, and the new model is no different. Leg room is okay, but again, it's not amazing. So if you want a Super Mini with a decent amount of space in the rear, you may not want to consider the Fiesta. In regard to headroom's not too bad. Well, I say that. Let me actually put this headrest up so I can sit back properly. So, yeah, with my woolly hat on, I am kind of grazing the roof lining, but if I didn't have my woolly hat on, I'd probably have a little bit to spare. But yeah, I wouldn't like to be sat here with 2 other adults. I think really the back of the Fiesta is best served for 2 adults or perhaps 3 children, or maybe two adults and a child. But yeah, I don't feel like there's a lot of space back here. I wouldn't say I feel cramped, but yeah, I would much prefer to be in the front. Anyway, in regard to practicality, to be honest, there's not a lot of it back here. Yes, you do have door bins, which I'm pretty sure I can fit my bottle of drink into. I don't know why I say bottle of drink. Why don't I just say bottle? But yeah, this bottle is 600 millilitres, and that fits in just nicely. You've also got that one there, as I mentioned. There's no map pockets or anything like that. There's no other USB ports or 12-volt sockets in the back, but this is the base model, so I can't really be too judgmental. And there's no centre armrest either. But again, this is a base model. You literally get what you pay for. So yeah, it's okay in the back, but nothing to really write home about. Although if you're writing home about rear space of a Super Mini, you probably ought to get out more. Speaking of getting out, I'm going to get out the rear. So let me talk you through the boot. Now, like rear space, the Fiesta isn't class leading when it comes to boot space, but it's still pretty agreeable. And for once, the boot is actually pretty tidy. Normally when I do my walk around videos, the boot is organised chaos, but for once it's reasonably tidy. So what you're looking at, I will cut to a clip where the boot is empty, by the way, but what you are looking at is 292 litres, which is okay, but it's not quite as good as cars such as the Polo or the Ibiza. If you want more space, you can, of course, fold down the 60/40 rear seats to give you 1,093 litres, but yeah, if you want a Super Mini with a bigger boot, you may want to look elsewhere. Actually, before I close it, 1 or 2 practical bits. You've got a hook either side if you want to hang something up. Right, let me talk you through the engine. So, as I think I may have touched upon earlier, when I drove the car last year, there's only the option of the 1.1 litre naturally aspirated petrol, which wasn't a bad engine. Oh, hello. Which wasn't a bad engine, but at the same time, you know, I thought to myself, this really needs the EcoBoost, and Ford has seen sense, and as you can see, Ford now offers the EcoBoost for this trim level. So this is the 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol. It has 95 horsepower along with 170 newton meters of torque. If you prefer that in pound-feet, that is 125. In regard to performance, this engine will hit 62 miles per hour in 13.8 seconds. Yes, that seems quite slow, but in the real world, this car does feel quite nippy. And the top speed is 105 miles per hour. Let me just actually prop the bonnet up so I can continue to walk around the car. In regard to fuel economy, this is the most fuel efficient engine you can buy for the Trend, despite there being a diesel. On a combined run, Ford states this engine can offer up to 64.2 mpg with CO2 emissions as low as 94 grams per kilometre. Now, if you go for the diesel, you do get a similar amount of economy, but it's not quite as good, although the CO2 emissions are similar. And if you go for the 1.1 litre petrol, again, they're similar, but the 1.1 litre is actually the least efficient, but that's because it is naturally aspirated, whereas this and the diesel are turbocharged. In regard to gearboxes, you can't have an automatic gearbox for the Trend. So if you do want an automatic gearbox, you'll have to look elsewhere or pay more money to get a higher spec Fiesta. This has a 6-speed manual gearbox, as does the diesel, but if you go for the 1.1 litre petrol, that has a 5-speed manual. Of course, all of those cars feed their power to the front wheels, but I doubt you would expect anything else from a Super Mini. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say for the time being. There will of course be a full review coming, so be sure to look out for that. In the meantime though, if you have any questions or queries, I do apologise, the wind's just picked up, so it may have interfered with the audio. In the meantime, if you do have any questions or queries, please don't hesitate to drop a question in the comments section below. Oh, really getting breezy now. But until the next time guys, I do hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed it, be sure to give it a massive thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and if you haven't done so already as well, click my bell. Click my bell, that sounds a bit weird. Click my bell so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.